The following program is made possible in part by Stephanie and Simon Bergson, Sander Jacobs, the Skolnick Family Charitable Trust, Kenneth and Sandy Greenblatt, the memory of Nadia and Milton Bergson, Holocaust survivors, Judy Friedman and Ron Goldstock in honor of Hyas.
All right, here we are. We're in the center of Times Square. It's the whole spiel. And where we're going is all the way down there. You see me yet? That's us. Super.
What's the most important thing about being on stage?
Have a good time. Even if you forget everything, just have a good time.
Is for everyone. Lauren Glassberg is here with more.
It is a musical and it's autobiographical, and while the story is about one man's experience growing up Jewish and growing up in Brooklyn, there are stories and moments that speak to anyone hoping to live out the American dream.
It is the story of a Brooklyn man's life shared on stage. Jake Ehrenreich chronicles his parents' journey from the Holocaust, his childhood in Brownsville, summers in the Catskills to present day in the show A Jew Grows in Brooklyn.
I really wanted to take a very serious story and tell it with as much joy and laughter and music as possible. And I think you open up people emotionally, and they can hear you a little differently when you do that. So that was my journey. It's worked out pretty well.
Ladies and gentlemen, the show is about to begin. There is no smoking on the premises. Management will continue to strictly enforce the rules prohibiting the throwing of fruit and vegetables at the performer. In addition, please leave your cell phones on and feel free to call each other during the show.
This is a replica of the house that I grew up in Brooklyn, New York. Brooklynites, wow. So you could bear me out, right? My house was very unusual. We were the only family on the block that had musicians living on their porch. That's my house. 603 East 91st Street. Let's see. Hello. How are you? My name is Jake Ehrenreich.
Jake, I remember.
You know, I lived here in this house.
You used to play the drums at the back of the house.
That's right. Yeah, there's a little room. It used to be paneled in wood.
That's it, that's it.
I used to stand here and play stoop ball, you know, for hours, just throwing the ball against that, the porch.
That's the good old days, right?
Oh, my God. All right, picture this, 1965. I'm 9 years old. My dad and we are watching our first baseball game together on TV. About the fifth or sixth inning, my father turns to me. He says, "What kind of game is this baseball? 2 people play and 8 people watch." This is what I'm dealing with growing up. Aside from my parents, I was the all-American regular inner-city kid. I got my red rubber ball, a Spalding or a Penzi Pinky. And with this little ball, we created a whole world for ourselves. We played punch ball and stoop ball and stick ball and box baseball. We played stick ball in the schoolyard and punch ball on our block, sewer to sewer, and everything at the park, Ditmas Park. This was a wonderland of concrete and chain link fence and steel monkey bars. Very important place to us. Look, what I'm trying to tell you is that growing up, I was the all-American regular kid. I really was. You know, except for my parents. Oh, yeah. And my name. My parents spoke Yiddish and they called me Yankele. And my mother would call me Yankee. And this was, I always felt like different.
But the
I'm
only
not kidding.
one who didn't think it was cool.
And there would be like a short version of it. It would be the Yang.
The Yang.
The Yang.
The Yang.
The Yang.
The Yang.
And
do you remember how you'd write it, right?
You would sign the Yang.
My name growing up was Yankee. We'd be playing on our block. We'd all get called in for dinner. Gary, Mark, Stephen, Yankee. In that moment, I morphed from being the regular all-American kid into being super immigrant Jew kid with Holocaust survivor parents.
That's
Did you
amazing.
know that my parents were survivors?
Absolutely.
Wow.
And I remember going with Hirsch one day. We were going to pick you up to go somewhere. And we were standing on the other side of the street. And we're yelling, Yankee, Yankee, come out. And you came out and your mother wanted you to come back. And she goes, Yankele, Yankele. And at that time, I knew her whole life story.
Right.
As soon as I heard her speak and the way she called you.
I would come home from school. My mom would be sitting at the kitchen table. She would want to talk about her family. Yankele, Kim schon zestechane de lamereden. Yankee, come already, sit down, let's talk. I was a kid. Mostly I just wanted to go out and play with my friends. But I sat long enough to learn some things. Of all the stories I heard, I particularly remember the story of my Uncle Joseph. This is my mother's brother. My mom would say to me, he was tall like you. He perished when the ship he was on, which was bound for freedom here in the United States, was mistakenly bombed by Allied forces at the end of the war. My mother was born in Wrocławek, Poland, to a working-class family. Her father was a butcher. My father was born in a small town called Zakrzów, Poland, to a very wealthy, very Hasidic Jewish family on a farming estate. When my grandfather died, they also moved to Wrocławek. There is a book written by the survivors of Wrocławek in which there is a story about my dad. It seems that during the Nazi occupation, when Jewish observances were outlawed, a few Jews dared to attend the Yom Kippur service. The Nazis found out about it. They pulled several of them out into the street and shot them, including a young 16-year-old boy who was still dressed in his prayer shawl. A few youths from the Youth Bund, including my father, went and buried those people in a proper Jewish cemetery. Now that my father had defied the Nazis, it was no longer safe for him to stay. My father went to my mother's father and promised he would take care of her if she would come with him until they were able to return. He was 19 at the time, she was 16. My father spent the rest of his life living out that promise because they never saw their families again. Ultimately, my parents ended up spending the war years in work camps in Siberia, deep in Russia. This is where my sister Wanda was born. She underwent a brain operation at 6 days old with no anesthetic. At the end of the war, my parents were sent to displaced persons camps in Germany. This is where my other sister Joni was born. She was 6 months old when my family arrived here in the United States on November 29th, 1949. Over the years, I have learned that my parents had 8 brothers and sisters between them before the war, and none after. You know, of course I knew we were different, but at that age, you just do not want to be different.
We always wanted to be Americans that didn't have funny sounding parents and didn't have all this baggage, this emotional baggage that we all carried around with us because of what our parents had gone through. So definitely, I think there was an envy of just having a normal life with normal parents, you know, that didn't have all this background, all this sadness in their background.
Anything that I knew about my father's family was what my mother told me. My father really didn't talk about it at all. He used to have terrible nightmares at night. He'd be screaming in the middle of the night.
He would wake up in the middle of the night.
I worked with my father in business for 12 years, and it wasn't until the 80s that I found out that he was on Schindler's List. After seeing the movie and reading the book, to know that my father is on that list, it was incredible to me. He never told the story.
We always went to the mountains with grine. You know what grine are? Greenhorns, immigrants, refugees, survivors, people just like us. Let me tell you something. This is actually where I felt the most comfortable in life, because we all had the same story. Having a name like Yankee in a group like this was like I arrived on the Mayflower. The names, Shmulek, Yetke, Matre, Rachel, Pesach, if you didn't spit on somebody when you said their name, it wasn't a real name. Come July 4th weekend, it would be like a mass migration on the Serengeti plains of Africa. Thousands and thousands of Jews would load up their cars and head up to the Catskills. This was like the Aryan nation's worst nightmare. You know, the Catskills was the finest training ground that there ever was, probably ever will be, for singers and comedians and young musicians like us. In those days, there were so many hotels. They needed as many musicians as they could get. We were kids. We learned so much. It was the kind of place, you get a job, you make a mistake, you keep your job. You make another mistake, keep your job. You make another mistake, all right, you keep your job. I'm telling you, there's no place like this today. Well, maybe the Oval Office. But other than that, Catskills in its heyday, it really was home to some of the finest entertainers in the entire world. No kidding. And even in my day of the 1970s, we still had Jerry Lewis going up to Browns. We had the great jazz trumpeter Bobby Johnson in the lounge at the Nevele. The one and only Speedy Garfin was at the Pines. But what I loved most of all, every hotel, big or small, it had a different floor show each night. Welcome, welcome everyone to the fabulous Starlight Room. Hello, my friends. Welcome to the fabulous Starlight Room. Do you have a nice day today? What a great day. How about this hotel, huh? I have worked at every hotel in the Catskill Mountains, and this is my favorite hotel right now. Come on, where are you going to go to get entertainment like this? Are you kidding? 2 hours out of New York City? What, are you going to fly to Puerto Rico? Forget it. You come here to the Catskills, it's beautiful. The surroundings are gorgeous. The entertainment is terrific. The food is great and plentiful. Your rooms are nicht dahin und nicht daher. What? My doctor told me to keep an eye on my stool. This was the nerve center of every hotel. I mean, it seats 1,700 people, and just imagine, people would have their little knockers. That was a big thing. You would knock on the table, and it would be like crazy in here. And then the MC would come out and say, "Hey, how are you? How are you? You having a nice day today? This is my favorite hotel in the Catskill Mountains, Kutcher's Country Club." Sure, the towels, are you kidding? The towels at this hotel are so fluffy. The towels at this hotel are so fluffy. They're so fluffy.
There's something hard to put in my valise.
I met with Mickey Freeman, who performed at the Concord, at Kutcher's, and many other great Catskill Mountains resorts.
The Concord went bankrupt in the middle of my act. I came on, I was a comedian. I walked up and said, "Congratulations, you're a partner."
He was there at the inception of many of the great Borscht Belt jokes that I now use in my show. I heard she went up to the room. He says, "Who are you?" She says, "I'm here to give you super sex." He says,
"I'll take the soup."
"I'll take the soup." Did you hear about the guy who came home? He found his best friend in bed with his wife?
And he said, "I have to, but you?"
No, I was always afraid to get married because they told me that marriage was like a hurricane. In the beginning, there's a lot of blowing and sucking noises. At the end, you lose your house. Who needs it? And people laughed and they forgot their troubles. And families like mine, Holocaust survivor families, the same man who cried every night in his bathroom at home came here and laughed every night.
At one time, I lived on Saratoga Street in Brooklyn, and my little boy, he was then maybe 3 or 4 years old, he was playing in the street with some children, and some children were called by the grandmother to come in. And he came home and said, why don't I have a grandmother? So I tried to tell him what you could tell to a 4-year-old boy. And he said he was going to go to shul and ask the rabbi, why did God make a Hitler, and so forth. That's an honest fact. What can I tell you? What could I tell him?
What could my father tell me? What could anybody say? When I was 19 years old, I toured the world performing on the SS Rotterdam. Now that I was away from home, I was a young man. I finally got up enough courage to write a letter to my dad. And I asked him, I said, hey, Pop, why don't you ever talk about your family? He wrote back a very beautiful but a very sad letter in which he said he was afraid. He was afraid that his words would pale in comparison to who and what was lost. That must have triggered something in my father, because after that, now he spoke quite openly about his life. Do you remember what my father did with the challah at our wedding?
He went around, he asked both of us. He disappeared, but he asked us. He said, would you mind if I went around and gave a piece to everybody at the wedding? We're like, okay. And he did. Took him like an hour. Went around giving everybody a piece of the bread. Oh, it was so cute.
I have no idea who this is. My beautiful bride, Lisa. Beautiful and wise. Very wise. Ah. I remember overhearing a conversation between Lisa and a friend. The friend asked her, so really, what does it feel like to finally be getting married for the first time at age 39? Lisa thought for a moment. Then she said, you know, at this age, it's really not that long a commitment anymore. God bless her. You know, during our ceremony, we picked some things from the Jewish tradition that we both share that really spoke to us personally. One was that I would wear my version of a kittel. This is a traditional white robe. It symbolizes purity on your wedding day. It's really a very beautiful tradition. I learned later that during the ceremony, the piano player, upon seeing Lisa in her white dress and me in my white robe, all the torches we had strewn about, he turned to the flute player and said, looks like a KKK rally. We had invited all of my relatives who perished to come and join us at the ceremony. My wedding day was the July hurricane of 1996. It's true, the way we like to look at it is that they all showed up. At the end of the ceremony, my rabbi decided he would help me with the breaking of the glass. And do you remember what happened when you put the glass down at my wedding?
I remember there was a little bit of difficulty.
And do you know whose fault that was?
Breaking the glass. I would think it's probably mine.
Takes the glass and he places it precariously, like on a small rock that he found out in the field. What am I going to do? I can't stop moving the glass during the ceremony. I gave it my best shot.
Little preemptive.
Yeah!
خود سجر شلاهی کل ساسم کل سمخا کل خطانه به کل. It was such a joyful time. Of this survivor family with 3 children, one was finally getting married. My father wrote another very beautiful letter in which he said that although this was such a joyful occasion and we had a tent full of people, there should be 10 tents full of people. And that Lisa and I were the rightful inheritors of the unfinished lives of those who perished. What was your experience sort of marrying a child of Holocaust survivors?
Well, I realized that it took actually a little while to think about what that really meant. I didn't really know anybody that was in your situation, and you certainly...
But you're Jewish.
I am, which you didn't believe
Jewish.
me,
Right.
when we met, of course. And now you can see as I'm standing here making challah bread.
Right.
When we decided to get married, when you proposed and then we said, let's have a kid right away, I was like, wow, that just felt really big for this family. I felt like I was more of a conduit for the healing of this family than the actual just being a mom and having a kid. I just felt a much greater responsibility and I felt proud to do it.
This is our son, Joseph Dovber Ehrenreich. He is named for his 2 great uncles who perished in the Shoah, just as I am named for my 2 grandfathers. This is his bris.
I hope you'll be patient with me in bringing up the Holocaust. But there's no way I could tell you anything about my family about the Holocaust. We said, and we were sincere about it, that we don't care if it's a girl or a boy as long as it's a healthy child. In fact, we didn't even know. Jake and Lisa didn't want to know. And again, I say, we were sincere in saying that it doesn't matter. But now, to make that back into serious, I'm very happy that there is a boy to carry the Ehrenreich name.
My mom didn't get to see my wedding. My dad called, and he complained about my mother. He said she was acting strange, she was being spiteful, and he was upset. I went up to Kaimish Lake where they had moved to see what was going on, and in fact, there was something really wrong with my mother. She had early Alzheimer's disease, which no one knew about at the time.
Of course, we went to all kinds of doctors, and one of them said that because he's from speaking to her, and she always referred to her family, that he thinks that it's not necessarily Alzheimer's, but that she suffers something called post-Holocaust syndrome.
My mom never got over the loss of her entire family. Both of my sisters have contracted the same early Alzheimer's disease that took my mother. Joni left us at age 55. Wanda is still with us physically. She's left us in a different way. My father, happy to say, my dad got to see it all. My dad had suffered from Parkinson's disease, but at the end, he was home, as he had been throughout his illness. He was surrounded by loved ones. He was revered by the community. He had his wits about him. But I think most importantly, my father was unafraid for his journey onward. May the same be said of all of us. Folks, do something with me for just a moment. Look up here on stage. Notice anything that is the color green. Once you've done that, close your eyes for just a second. And think of anything you noticed that was the color brown. Then open your eyes. If you look carefully, you'll see green and brown. They're here on stage together all the time. But mostly what becomes real for us is what we focus on. We can guide our lives by focusing mostly on those things that are beautiful and joyful. Be grateful to have them. You know, when my son was born, on his birth announcement, we decided we would use a special midrash. Midrash is a Jewish teaching. With each child, the world begins anew. And I have thought of going back again, but all I'd see are strangers there, and all the scars that love repairs. Yet as my mind goes wandering through my room, I wonder, does some other kid dream the dreams that I once did? What happens to the laughter and the joy? It's still right here inside of me. It's there if we but look to see. Doesn't seem to me so long ago. And I recall the days that I would gaze upon my Brooklyn rose. I can still recall those days that I would gaze upon my Brooklyn rose. Folks, thanks for coming. Good night.
Good evening. My name is Joseph Dovbear Ehrenreich. I am named for my two great uncles who perished in the Shoah, along with their 8 brothers and sisters. My grandfather, my Zaidi, Jonah Ehrenreich, was the only one of his family who survived the Holocaust. I would like to read to you a portion of the article he wrote entitled Remember. Although I personally belong to the generation that perished in the days of the Holocaust, it was my fate to be one of the few that survived. While it was not meant for me to share in their lot, I feel that I know and have an obligation to tell how they felt and what they wished in the last desperate days of their lives. The thought of going up in smoke with not a trace or memory left was worse than death itself, and the knowledge or hope that someone would remember eased their pain. We owe it to them, all of us, not to betray this, their last hope and wish. Let us remember. Say a prayer or light a candle, maybe shed a tear, or just take a moment to reflect. Whichever way you do it, let us keep the faith and remember, and let the world remember.